Current topics in management. Now we are talking about the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies. We are at a massive change. It's not just in the horizon. This PPT was created several years ago in 2017. And so we are going through a huge change now. What is that change called? Anybody know? And so we are going through lots of changes, and there's the quantum computers, the quantum leap. So back in 1995, when I first came to Asia, many people were starting to talk about what is the internet. And many of us were unaware of what the internet was, but that was, some people say, the third industrial revolution. But that's 1995. Now it's 2021. We are well into the fourth industrial revolution, not just the third industrial revolution. And so there's new unimaginable technologies, and they're out there now. Like I say, this PPT was created in 2017 by experts that were involved in Bitcoin. And I wish I listened to myself better. I was teaching students about Bitcoin in 2012. I wish I got it invested in Bitcoin back then. I am invested now, but it's been growing like crazy and the changes are crazy. So this revolution, what is this revolution? Most people are too busy to understand it or to be aware of it. Most people say they don't have time. So what do you know about blockchain? The idea of it is the face of Bitcoin. So not just Satoshi Nakamoto, this is a mystery guy, invisible man, a pseudonym for the inventor of Bitcoin and blockchain back in 2009. He created a white paper that was talking about a cure for the world. And so why did he invent it? Some people say to help criminals, but I believe the best answer is to solve a problem with trust. This last week, you should be aware that there was like $10.5 billion invested in Bitcoin. Earlier this year, Tesla and Elon Musk invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. But rather than just show people are adopting it, what is important is that the world is in a huge, dangerous situation because some people are owning factories that just make cash, make money for countries. The American dollar factory has been going crazy. And so they're making so much money and giving so much money out to people. The people that just have a little bit are losing their value. And most of the money is going to governments or to big corporations. And so the rich are getting more or richer or more powerful, whereas the poor are getting poorer. And so there's no control over that. The government can create as much cash and turn on the cash factory as often as they want, as much as they want. And they've gone through making trillions and trillions of dollars this year. And so we have the destruction of the value of cash. And so the governments of almost every country, they have promised every time that there was a recession, they printed money, but then they said, oh, they're never going to do it again. But here we are again. They keep turning these factories on. And so Goldman Sachs, Lehman Brothers, JP Morgan, Bank of England, the Federal Reserve System, all of these organizations, they promise they're not going to do these things, but then they keep doing it. So there is an issue of trust. And where the money goes, there's an issue of trust. There's a gap between the rich and the poor. 3 billion people, about half of the world's population, live on less than $2 a day. 85 people have more wealth than half of the world. So that's just 85 versus almost 8.5 billion. So there is a big issue. The IMF is issuing a report saying that income inequality is the biggest issue, the biggest problem in the world. So there's the solution. Satoshi Nakamoto created a solution, which was Bitcoin, which was intended to end this abuse of trust and money control just by a few people. And so what he was talking about is, what is Bitcoin? Maybe it's better to identify what is blockchain. And although there's a couple of experts that are going to talk about blockchain, a lot of people are aware of the word, but not actually what it is. So here's a cartoon showing that the boss is walking up to the IT guys or the tech guys or the research guys saying, I think we should build a blockchain. And so the experienced guys are saying, does he understand what he's talking about? Or is he just repeating something that he saw in some magazine? And so he says, what color do you want it? And he says, I think mauve or purple is the most RAM. So most people have no idea what it is. Blockchain has got nothing to do with color. It's other things. So the definition of blockchain, since we are in Korea, in Korean language, it's the same thing here in English. It's a public transaction ledger that makes transactions secure by sharing the entire transaction ledger without a central authority overseeing and managing it. And so as we go through, the idea of one person can send information into the internet and the other person can receive it. Usually you used to have an agent in the middle controlling it, like a bank. And now we have these miners that just check these details. They collect information, record information, verify, and approve the information. And so again, here, the sender, you transmit something, and there might be two different miners. They're checking the transaction. This guy sending it, did he have it to start with? And he's checking. And this guy receiving it, did he actually get it? Those details are the basic idea. And then we get into, once we understand that there's many people using this system, and each person has a small amount of information from this transmission, then not one person can cheat the system because it's spread out over everybody. And so that's what we're talking about here. The old way, you had to go through a bank to transfer some money or some valuables or some assets, which means the bankers, the owners, get a big percentage of that, and they can control how much you have to pay for agency fee, and government controls them. So not only the middlemen agents as banks, but the government middlemen agents, they can possibly distort the system and make the two people sending and receiving get cheated. That's what some people say. So that idea of trust. But if it's going out to the world or in many different nodes, decentralized, distributed amongst everybody involved, it is more of the trust system. So the miner's role is to collect, record, verify, and approve information. And so the idea of transaction information, A sends the Bitcoin, B receives it, but the amount of Bitcoin was sent, all of that is recorded, the time it's recorded, the date, the details are sent, all of that is recorded into the blockchain. It's like a puzzle, a math puzzle. It actually is easy to understand if you just think of it is money that is controlled by a genius math formula. So solving this giant Sudoku math puzzle, the winner that checks these transmissions, they get paid $50,000, $80,000 just to check it. They get given these Bitcoins. By their proof of work is the consensus. So once several people check that there is consensus, that is the idea of the blockchain. And so the first blockchain started with Satoshi Nakamoto back in 2009, and now we're up to 2021. And so we keep making more and more and more, just like governments, but the difference is there's only 21 million possible Bitcoins that can be created. And so the number of these details is limited, unlike a national currency. And so in the past, the national banks or the reserve banks, we had issues with trust, and we had issues with control because they can make as much as they want. This year, they created billions and billions, more than ever before in history. And so that trust is very low. And so the idea of now, when the consumers and the clients are spread out, so not one person controls it, there is more trust. So why is it revolutionary? It's a system that keeps people honest. All transactions are open, transparent, verifiable. It's a new paradigm that will challenge the foundation of systems. It could be changing the world. It's reducing the amount of fraud or lies because you are showing everything. So getting into the agenda, what was the growth of blockchain and the adoption of it? And this guy here is kind of important to know. He created this Ethereum, which is almost just as famous as Bitcoin. We're going to go through it. So this idea of blockchain started with Bitcoin, then blockchain 2.0 is once we started to develop other valuable cryptocurrencies. These are all cryptocurrencies. Now blockchain 3.0 is when society is adopting it, government's adopting it, science, health. They're using blockchain as a platform to diverse industries. And in the future, there's this new paradigm. The whole idea of agents or banks or governments, their value controlling money is being taken away. So the idea of in the past, you could have a car or a house worth $250,000, but used, you can sell it for half price or less. Nowadays, you don't have to worry about some middleman, a car salesman that you don't trust, because you can check who has the car, where is the car, and transfer money, which is going directly person to person. And that cuts out that idea of untrusted middlemen. And so the fourth industrial revolution, again, it is happening now. You should be aware of that. And it's connected with artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things. It's an enormous impact on society. The idea of many different aspects. So Industry 1.0 in 1784, we have examples here. And then the Industry 2.0 in 1870, and Industry 3.0 in 1969, and then Industry 4.0, which is happening now. These are times when the world is changing. And this top picture here is an image of a citizen of the world, which is actually just a robot. And so the idea that robots have a passport and they can travel the world by themselves, make decisions on their own, answer questions, ask questions, make jokes. We are now not just living amongst ourselves and people from other countries, but we're living amongst artificially intelligent robots nowadays. And so many years ago, McKinsey did a report and they said, how far away are we from this future change? And it says, based on the current rate of evolution, we believe blockchain solutions could reach their full potential in the next 5 years. This was said 5 years ago. So McKinsey is saying blockchain could be at its fullest potential today, now, 2021. And so in 2015, we were exploring details, starting investment. 2016-17, we had early adoption. Now there's the growth of it. 2025 is the maturity. This is not just from McKinsey, but also from Accenture. And this also shows the pace of innovation. So the whole idea of how fast did it go for 10% of people to adopt this new technology, whether it's a telephone or TV or video games, MP3, electricity, cars, cell phones, whatever it is, it shows almost everything adopts quite quickly. And the farther you go into the present day, or the farther you go into the future, the faster new technologies are adopted. Back here, this idea of the telephone or these other things, it took a long time to get to the peak. But these ones are rising incredibly fast. And so what is the current landscape of this? Some people say it's gambling. Some people say that it doesn't have value. However, there is a lot of evidence saying it does have incredible value right now, and you should be aware of details. You don't have to invest in it, but you need to know that it is such a revolutionary idea that it could change the world, and it is destabilizing banks and governments. So this idea of payments are growing like crazy with Bitcoin. And it's growing, again, this is from 2016. There was 8,300 different places around the world where you could you could pay for things with Bitcoin. Most payment in the world is done through what? Usually cash. Number two, it's usually done through the Visa credit cards or MasterCard credit cards. Well, today, Visa has announced that they accept users of Visa to pay and control their accounts through Bitcoin. So now Visa is a Bitcoin system. But Visa itself may go out of business once people realize the full potential of Bitcoin. The idea of media coverage, there's so much information out there. You should be aware of what's happening now. Like I say, somebody invested $10.5 billion today in Bitcoin. Elon Musk and Tesla invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin earlier. Tesla is accepting Bitcoin as payment to buy the Tesla cars and products already. And the Visa card is accepting Bitcoin for payment. This is an actual picture from several years ago. There are bars and cafes in Korea where you can just walk in and pay for things just with Bitcoin. 14 or 2015. And they're saying now it's a joke. Look at my Facebook when I took a picture of buying a beer with Bitcoin many years ago. Now that beer is one of the most expensive beers in the world. If I kept that many Bitcoin, I'd be even wealthier. These are examples of exchanges where you can buy and sell or where you can trade Bitcoin. And so this from 2017, this is showing the number one platform was BitThumb, then Bitfinex. And you can keep going through seeing many different platforms where you can buy, sell, or trade Bitcoin. So this is an example of what a Bitcoin mine looks like. So many different computers checking online just to see the transaction, to verify the transaction. And as I showed you before, this idea of, where is it here? This student, they researched this Bitcoin mining and identified in 2020, most of the Bitcoin mining and most of the electricity used for the Bitcoin mining was taken in China. And so this also says that the number one user, even back in 2017, China has the most mining operations there are, and that's where it controls the system. So large blockchain projects. Of course, the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance is one. There's many. LG is some, Bank of Korea, Shinhan Bank, Samsung Electronics. There's many different large blockchain projects. You should be aware of how that's happening and developing. The idea of the decentralization and the control and the trust going out is changing the world. So what exactly, again, is Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency outlook? This shows from the beginning in 2009 up until 2017, it grew quite a bit around 2014, and then it grew again around 2017, 2018. And so at the beginning, they had to pay these miners many Bitcoin to get them interested in trying to verify the network. And every 4 years, Bitcoin payments to the miners is halved, because as more people adopt it, it's more easily accepted. So you don't need to have specialist miners verifying it. And so each year, each 4 years, they're paid less. And as they're paid less, that's when the value of Bitcoin jumps. So it jumped a lot at this point when there was a halving event, and it jumped a lot at this point. And this year, actually, May of 2021, there was another halving event, and Bitcoin was around $6,000 then, but it jumped up to now. Recently, it went past $60,000 for one Bitcoin. So it's growing like crazy. Anytime anybody has any questions, please let me know.